Okay, so the next regulation is with regards to undesirable business practices. So, pursuant to the provisions of Section 63, subsection 1 of the Act, the following business practices are prohibited. So, it means that you cannot do these things. It is prohibited by you to do. So, Regulation 35.1.1.1. Any arrangement in terms of which any part or person that directly or indirectly controls or manages any franchised businesses requires that any franchise operation or outlet of such franchised business may only be marketed, promoted, or disposed of through the agency of the franchisor or a property practitioner designated by the franchisor, or which imposes any form of penalty in respect of a failure to do so. So, for example, a franchised real estate company cannot require its franchisees to exclusively use the franchisor's preferred agents for property marketing or sales. For instance, if a property franchisor insists that only its agents can sell properties under its brand and penalizes the franchise for using another agent, this is prohibited. So this is quite self-explanatory. Then the next regulation, any arrangement in terms of which any part or person that directly or indirectly controls or manages any residential property development, including a body corporate or homeowners association, the managing organization, receives money or any other reward in exchange for the benefit, an advantage, or other form of preferential treatment in respect of the marketing of properties in such property development. For example, a managing organization like a body corporate or an HOA, a homeowners association, cannot accept payments from property practitioners in exchange for giving those particular practitioners preferential access to marketing properties in that development. For example, a body corporate receiving, in brackets, a kickback to favor one real estate agent or agency over another one in marketing apartments within a complex is illegal. It's within the code of conduct, meaning there are certain estates, certain golf estates or villages or whatever estates, and they usually say, but listen, if you as an agency ABC Properties want to market and sell within our estate, you need to pay us a 5,000 Rand administration fee to gain access to this complex. That is illegal. It's against the Property Practitioners Act and it's against the Code of Conduct. We can then report those HOAs to the PPRA, to the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. So we can definitely report those estates or those villages or those body corporates or HOAs that requests such payments. It's illegal. They usually used to do it with the previous legislation that didn't really regulate this, but it is now illegal to do so. So I do have a drafted standard document that can be sent out to such an estate to say, good day, I am so-and-so agent from so-and-so agency. In terms of the PPA, the Property Practitioners Act 22 of 2019 and the Code of Conduct Regulation 35, when we refer to undesirable business practices, we refer to this specific regulation and that you are currently acting against legislation and the Code of Conduct, and we immediately instruct you to refrain from it, and we will indeed gain access to that specific property because the seller of that specific property has given us a mandate where they have given us permission to market and to sell their property in this specific estate or complex. So you have no right in terms of legislation to prevent us from gaining access. and if that seller sends you a code to gain access with prospective clients or buyers, you can do so in terms of legislation. It's within your right to do that. So again, in terms of our own agency at Parkland Real Estate, we do have a letter that you can use and that we will send to you if you come across anything like that, where we instruct that HOA or body corporate to refrain from continuing to act against legislation. Otherwise, we will report them to the PPRA. So this is what this specific clause actually means. Okay, so moving on. Requires that any property in such property development may only be disposed of through the agency of the managing organization or a property practitioner designated by the managing organization, meaning the HOA, or which imposes any form of penalty in respect of a failure to do so, meaning an HOA cannot force property owners to use their own designated real estate agent, meaning the body corporate or the HOA cannot tell those owners in that specific estate or complex to only use ABC properties. They cannot do it. It's against the law to do so. They cannot impose a penalty or a fine when they then use another agency, XYZ agency. So if a property owner in a gated community is told that they cannot, that they can only sell their home through a specific agency or agent, this is prohibited business practices, and then it's an undesirable business practice in terms of the PPA and the Code of Conduct. And we can then again report such an HOA to the PPRA, and what can happen is the PPRA can say, listen, if you do not refrain from doing this immediately, we will impose a hefty penalty on you, which could be a couple of R100,000, or they can actually withdraw their certificates from the PPRA, and then they cannot do business in that specific estate anymore. So then they will close down anyway because they cannot operate. It's illegal for them to operate then without those specific FFC certificates. Okay, so moving on. Requires that any property in such development may only be disposed of through the managing organization or a person or entity designated by the managing organization. I just want to confirm that we did do this clause. Okay, so that one we did, excuse me for that. So effectively provides an advantage to any one property practitioner or group of property practitioners over and above any other property practitioners in providing services in relation to properties in such property development. Meaning, a property developer cannot provide exclusive or unfair advantage to a particular estate agency when it comes to selling homes in a development. For example, if a property developer gives a specific real estate company exclusive marketing right while preventing other companies from accessing the development, this is actually prohibited in terms of the Code of Conduct, in terms of undesirable business practices. Okay, so then effectively excludes or disadvantage any property practitioner or group of property practitioners from being able to provide services in relation to properties in such property development. Meaning, a property developer cannot disadvantage certain real estate agents by preventing them from marketing or selling properties in the development. For instance, if a development refuses to work with a particular real estate firm for arbitrary reasons while allowing others to operate freely, it would be a violation of this rule, meaning it would again then be against undesirable business practices in terms of the PPA and Code of Conduct. Okay. Then if we move on to section 32, sanctionable conduct. A property practitioner is guilty of sanctionable conduct if he or she or it, meaning the agency, in the same transaction acts as a property practitioner on behalf of two or more persons whose interests are not in all material respects identical in respect to that transaction and receives remuneration from all parties concerned in respect of such transaction unless all affected persons in writing agree thereto. Meaning, an estate agent represents both the seller and the buyer in a property transaction where their interests are not aligned, such as the seller seeking a higher price while the buyer is looking for a lower price. The agent cannot accept commission from both parties unless they have obtained written consent from both the buyer and the seller to do so. So that is self-explanatory. So then B, fails in respect of any act performed by him or her or it as a property practitioner to give a full and proper explanation in writing within 30 days of being called upon by the authority in writing to do so, to any person having a material interest in the performance of such act, meaning if an agent is requested by the authority to provide a detailed explanation of their actions in a property transaction and fails to respond in writing within 30 days, they are guilty of sanctionable conduct. It means that you can be sanctioned and there can be fines and penalties imposed on you because you are not complying with the requests of the authorities or regulatory bodies. Then C, fails to pay any money due to the authority or in respect of the fund within 1 month after such monies become due. If a property practitioner neglects to pay their annual fees or now their 3 yearly fees or whatever fees it is that they need to pay, either CPD or their FFC fees, etc., to the authority, or contributions to the Fidelity Fund within a month of the due date, they are in breach of this regulation. It just means that when your monies and fees are due at the fund, make sure that you pay it. Otherwise, they will impose penalties on you, and those penalties will heap up with interest as well. D, fails to furnish in writing within a period determined by the authority any information that the authority has requested in writing and reasonably requires in order to properly exercise its powers under this Act, meaning an authority requests financial statements maybe, or transaction records for an agent or agency, and the agent or agency fails to provide these documents within a specified time frame. This constitutes sanctionable conduct. So it just means if the authority or regulation or any institution that is connected with the real estate industry, meaning like maybe the FIC Center or the PPRA, if they require any of those documents and financial statements and records and so on, you have to give it to them within that specific time frame. Otherwise, they will hit you with a fine of a few $100,000. So that's why it's so important to comply with things like the FIC requirements, FICA compliance in terms of your clients, your buyers, your sellers, and so on, so that you always have those things on record. At a later stage, I will also then go into detail and explain to you the compliance checklists with regards to FICA, what you need to do, what we require with regards to maybe FICA to natural persons, companies, trusts, and so on, and why it is so important and how the FICA legislation has now changed, where they are now clamping down on real estate companies, on real estate agencies who do not comply with FICA. So that is very, very important, but we will discuss that in detail in a next session. E, fails to comply with or contravenes any provisions of the Code of Conduct. An agent who disregards ethical standards outlined in the Code of Conduct or the Act, such as failing to disclose a conflict of interest or any breach in terms of this provision. So anything that you do that is unethical or dishonest, it contravenes the Code of Conduct, and it is a sanctionable conduct at the end of the day. If in his or her capacity as a director of a company or member contemplated in these paragraphs that I mention here, or of a close corporation or trustee or trust, which is a property practitioner, and which failed to comply with these sections 50 or 51, or did not take all reasonable steps to prevent such failure. So it means that a director or a principal of a property management company does not take corrective actions when the company fails to meet regulatory requirements related to a trust account maybe, or financial reporting that needs to be done, etc. If they don't comply with it, then again it's sanctionable conduct. A hefty fine and penalty can be imposed, and this also comes down to that FICA compliance that is so important with regards to companies to comply with it. Financial reports, auditing reports, FICA compliance, a copy of all the offer to purchase agreements, etc. There's a whole list of compliance that needs to be done, and the companies, the directors and principals of the agencies need to make sure that they comply with these things. And there we obviously require the assistance of the agents to request this information from the clients, from the buyers and from the sellers while you are busy with the transaction, not afterwards, because you struggle to get those documents afterwards from the clients. Once someone is interested in making an offer, you inform them right there, okay, when we do sign the offer to purchase, please bring along your FICA documents. These are the documents that I do require. I cannot submit your offer to purchase to the seller if you do not bring your FICA along. And there's a lot of other agents on this property as well, and they also have interested buyers. So if their OTP and FICA is in first, you would have lost out on this property. That's a tactic that I use in order to get my FICA as soon as possible from my clients. And yeah, almost always it works, where I obtain like 98% of the FICA. There's maybe one or two numbers or sales numbers that I usually then need to obtain from the clients. Your sellers, ask them for the FICA up front. Ask them, please, when we do list this property, can I have a copy of your ID, proof of residence, whatever FICA is required, ask them for it up front. If they don't want to give it to you up front and say, listen, I'll give it to you when we've got an OTP, then also the same thing. When you go and sign the after purchase that has been accepted by them, you ask them for a copy of the FICA immediately and tell them, I cannot send this off to the attorneys if I don't have your FICA. So then the transaction will stall and it will take longer than it needs to take. So ask them for that FICA documents immediately. So, but again, we will go into more detail with FICA compliance, but in terms of the code of conduct, here it stipulates that if you don't comply with these things, it is a sanctionable conduct and you can be sanctioned by the FICA Center, and also by the PPRA. You can actually lose your FFC license, and then all the agents sit without work, and the agency, the principal of the agency can never open another agency again. So it's really strict compliance that they are enforcing at the moment. Okay, so the next one, commits an offense involving an element of dishonesty. So again, always act with honesty, integrity, be ethical, and then you will not ever have a problem in terms of the act or in terms of the code of conduct. Fails to inform the authority within 14 days of a change in his or her or its contact details. So if your contact details do change, you move, your email address, cell phone numbers, all of that change, the agency moves, the PPRA must be notified within 14 days after that change. Then J, differentiates, distinguishes, or excludes consumers directly or indirectly on the basis of their race, their gender, their sex, their pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, etc. The list goes on. So if you do exclude directly or indirectly anyone based on these following criteria, it will be an offense and also as sanctionable conduct. So again, if you act ethically in the industry, fair, honest dealings, if you ask yourself what I'm doing, is it right or is it wrong? If it is wrong and you know that what I'm doing now is wrong, then refrain from acting in such a manner and continuing to act in such a manner, and you will be fine in terms of the act and the code of conduct. So, for example, if an agent refuses to show properties to prospective buyers based on their race or gender, or commits a criminal offense such as theft or assault while carrying out professional duties, then it will be sanctionable conduct. Okay, so the next one will be fails to comply with or contravenes any provision of this act. An agent violates any other specific regulation outlined in this act will be sanctionable. Subsequent ratification or correction of any conduct contemplated in these sections does not constitute a defense, meaning if you did something wrong and now the authorities wants to give you a fine and you do go ahead and you correct it, it doesn't mean it's a defense to say, listen, but I corrected my behavior, I'm no longer guilty. So you will still be fined and sanctioned. If a property practitioner is found guilty of sanctionable conduct, the authority may, after the application of sections 3 and 5 of the Promotion of Administration Justice Act 2000, Act number 3 of 2000, withdraw the Fidelity Fund certificate of that property practitioner. They may impose on the property practitioner a fine not exceeding the maximum amount determined by the Minister of Justice, and they may reprimand such property practitioner and note his or her or its transgression on its website, provided that the authority may suspend payment of a fine or any portion thereof, or the withdrawal of any Fidelity Fund certificate for a period not exceeding 3 years, and on other further conditions that the authority may determine. So it means that the authority may publicly reprimand such an agent or even agency on either their website or Facebook pages and so on, any social media platforms, for misconduct that they have committed, and may choose to suspend the payment of a fine or withdraw of the Fidelity Fund certificate for up to 3 years based on specific conditions. So the thing is, whatever you have done, if you have contravened the Code of Conduct or the PPA, then they can reprimand you, they can impose a fine, they can either suspend your Fidelity Fund certificate or they can withdraw it permanently, depending on what the agent or agency did, or even the agent on behalf of the agency can cause the agency to lose their license, to lose their FFC certificate, and that would be a tremendous blow on that specific principal and director of the company and all the other employees that work at the company, because it means that they will no longer be able to operate and to generate an income for themselves and to make a living. And that all because of one agent who was acting unethically and dishonest and was not acting in the best interest of the clients. So that is the repercussions that can happen when you do not act ethically and honestly. So the Code of Conduct and understanding the Code of Conduct is absolutely vital. It's crucial for you as an estate agent to always act ethically and honestly. And if you are not sure about something, phone your mentor or phone your principal of the agency. Tell them and inform them what's going on with a specific transaction or with a specific client, a buyer or seller, or with regards to their FICA compliance and so on, and rather ask for assistance and help if you are not sure, in order to prevent fines and penalties and in order to totally be barred from the PPRA. and to have your FFC permanently withdrawn. You are then playing with the livelihood of your fellow agents in the agency, and you are also playing with the livelihood of the principal and directors of that agency who's also trying to make a living out of this business. So, as I said, the Code of Conduct and the Property Practitioners Act, this piece of legislation lays the foundation of your whole career as a property professional, as a property practitioner, and how you deal with your clients, your buyers, your sellers, your colleagues, your principal at the agency, etc. So it's vitally important to always make sure that you know what the PPA, the Property Practitioners Act, is all about, that you know what the Code of Conduct stipulates, what you may and may not do, and what must be included in documents, what you need in terms of FICA compliance. And then if you, as I said, act in the best interest of your client, your seller, and always ask that question, am I acting ethically and am I acting honestly in this transaction and to the best interest of my client? If the answer on that is yes, then you know that you are doing a perfect job. But if your answer is no, then immediately stop what you are doing and rather ask the advice and assistance of your mentors or colleagues or principal in the agency to ensure that you comply with the Code of Conduct and that you do not put yourself and your colleagues and the principal, the agency, at risk through your unethical and dishonest actions. So make sure that you go and read through this document carefully, you understand it, and you apply it to your day-to-day business principles when you deal with clients out there.